comes a point in your life where you need to learn to call your own shots. I put a lot into this, a lot more than I wanted to. I lost weight, I was hungry, I was tired, I wasn't going to the gym.
All right, guys. Well, welcome back to episode 5 of the Build-Up. We are doing something a little different today. We are shooting a little short podcast and just really talking about the importance of community, having support around you, and just really talking about the Build-Up itself. I have Tate Weaver with me.
What's up?
What up? We were actually inside his store, Hyperthrift, in the Vancouver Mall. He is also online as well. What's your online?
Hyperthrift.com. Come on now.
Yeah, I just wanted to get in, ask us, have a conversation, ask you a couple questions, and just really talk.
What you got for me?
This series is called The Build-Up. So what does the build-up mean to you when you hear the build-up? And then also, too, what are some things that you are building up yourself?
Yeah, so what does the build-up mean? Well, the build-up, when I hear that, I think of wanting to improve yourself. I feel like that's a figurative way of saying that you want to improve. And something that I have long said to myself is that improvement is movement. If you're not moving, you're being stagnant. And stagnation is dangerous. We see examples of this everywhere. Stagnant water brews bacteria. Living a stagnant or otherwise a sedentary lifestyle is a means to create an unhealthy body and an unhealthy mind. I think movement is very important. And it's something that we're uniquely privileged to do now while we're alive.
Yeah.
And so I think if that's something that we're able to do, that's something that we ought to do all the time. I think that when I say that, I mean that in a figurative sense, but also very much in a literal sense while we're young. But I think that we ought to move because that is synonymous with improvement.
Yeah.
And when you say the build-up, that's what I think of. It sounds synonymous with wanting to improve yourself in any realm, be it physical, spiritual, mental, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and to add to that, that's also what I talk about. I mean, last episode was the importance of spending time outside because it's not just physical, it's also mental.
Right.
And with this episode, I wanted to also talk about the importance of building community as you're embarking on the build-up or doing something more. You want to be around people with similar mind and, that will support you. I wanted to talk a little bit about your store since we are in here. I know you've been building it up for the last couple months. Yeah. Just talk a little bit about that and really how this came about and really betting on yourself.
Yeah, no, so this store is Hyperthrift. Been here a little over 5 months now. We're inside of the Vancouver Mall in Vancouver, Washington. And I used to manage a store called PacSun, a California-based retail store that's also here in the mall. I can see it right now. It's right across the way from this store. And this suite where my store is was empty, and I would look across while I was managing PacSun, a big corporate store. I just toyed with the idea of opening this and what it would be like if I worked for myself. And I had been in the mall for years running this PacSun store, and I knew damn well how to run a business, and I wondered whether or not I could run my own as opposed to staying, at a corporate job, reporting to a district manager all the time, having someone breathing down my neck. Even as the general manager, it was frustrating. So I started Hyperthrift as an online store in January of this year, in January of 23, and I continued to work here, and I continued to toy with the idea of leasing a spot, and I had my eyes on this spot for months and months, and I had already established some rapport with the mall management team here because I had worked here for so long. And so I reached out to them really just for fun, and I asked them what it would take to lease a suite here at the mall. How much would it cost? What would it look like? What would the terms of a lease be in terms of how I can operate and what things we can do and can't do? And it sounded like a fair deal. So we signed the lease. I signed the lease in March, and my best bud Spencer was the assistant manager of the PacSun store that I managed. And when I said that I was quitting and I was going to open up a business here, he said, let me come do it with you.
That's great.
And so he also quit. And together we opened the store on May 20th.
Nice.
So we've been around a little over 5 months now.
Yeah.
And it was all out of pocket. We didn't do any loans or anything. So we were lighter when we opened. And as we've been making sales, we've been reinvesting into new fixtures and new decor and obviously more product. It's been scary and it's taken a lot of sacrifice. Truth be told, a lot more than I anticipated or wanted. But, there comes a point where there's momentum and you can stop or you can just keep it going, and that ties back into betting on yourself.
Yeah.
And I was confident that I could do this, and once I began doing this and we opened the gate and customers were coming in and we were making purchases for the first time on our first day, I was confident that we could continue to do it. I had no means of reassuring myself that we would be successful from the get-go or that we would be stable in any capacity, but I knew that we could do it because we had begun. So yeah, it was daunting continuing forward, but I said we've come well too far to stop this.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can make out of this. And we're going on almost half a year now.
It's crazy.
Got the website up. Black Friday's right around the corner. Christmas is around the corner as well. Yeah, it's been tough. It's been scary. There have been times where Spencer and I have foregone paying ourselves in order to reinvest into the store and make sure it's a place that people want to come and feel interested and are confident that they can find things that they want to wear or that they want to use in their lives. We've got apparel and electronics and all sorts of vintage things. I hear all the time, and quite frankly, I'm fucking sick of hearing it, but I hear, oh, you're making me feel old, or oh, this is my childhood. And though I'm sick of saying that or hearing it because it's redundant at this point, it really what it does is it drives home the fact that we're doing what we wanted to do. This is supposed to be a vintage space where we're sitting on an old leather couch and we've got a 1984 TV behind us and a Nintendo Entertainment System and VHS tapes.
Yeah.
So when people say that, like, I hear it so much, but also I ought to be proud when I hear that because it means that we're doing a good job. We've made a great retail store that people find interesting and that people want to visit. So we bet on ourselves, and here we are.
That's great. And I mean, a lot of people don't really bet on themselves, and that's the component, I think, to talk about confidence. You were confident that you could do it, even though you were scared. Yeah. And I think that's where courage comes in. You know, courage is not doing something that you're not scared of. It's doing something despite of being scared. And, you know, overcoming, especially like we talked about a little bit ago, having Spencer here, which is one of your close friends, believe in something that you believe in and take the risk with you. That's what I talk about, the importance of community and people that believe in you and also just want to come along the journey with you, because having a similar mindset is really important along this journey. It's hard as it is, and let alone not having support. Yeah. You feel like alone, but having Spencer or even me, having people like Spencer and Tate that we bounce ideas off of, even during the buildup, you're constantly talking to me like, hey, when's the next episode coming out? Hey, how's it going? What about this? What about that?
Because that's our job as friends, you know? That's what we're supposed to do. Yeah, totally.
That's like super important. That's why I wanted to come on this podcast and be like, guys, the buildup is also, you want to build relationships and build people around you because community is so important, because the journey will feel alone. You'll feel like wanting to give up. You will be scared. There'll be days where you're not motivated, and then I'll get a message from you like, hey, what's going on with the video? Or, hey, what are you working on episode 5? And I'm like, I'm on it, you know, because you just get lost in the sauce. Yeah, this is amazing. You created a great retail store for yourself. And what's next? What do you see next for the store? I know you just relaunched a website. Yeah,
I mean, e-com is probably what I want to emphasize on going forward because, I mean, back to Paxson that I managed for years, I'm very familiar with the company because I'd been there for so long. They have over 300 retail locations all throughout the U.S., and even still, their website alone does 70% of the company's annualized revenue. So out of those 300 stores, all 300 of those only make up 30% of the company's overall revenue. Wow. So over 2/3 comes from just their website. Wow. And hosting a website's like a couple $100 a month. Having 300 stores is millions of dollars in terms of overhead fees and everything that consists of. Yeah. And so there is so much money to be made with much healthier margins online, so long as you can learn to do that. So now that we have relaunched our website and we're back in the digital space, it's all about marketing that and reaching as many people as possible and creating a better flow of orders so that we can have this as a great place for people to come in person so long as they're in the area. But if they're not around here, then this is also the distribution center for, you know, a national service of shipping retail goods and apparel. That's what I want this to be.
That's good. That's so crazy. I mean, everything's digital nowadays. Yeah. Let me bring back a little bit too as well. You also focus on your fitness and health. Talk a little bit about that. Obviously, with the build-up, this is all physical as well. What are you doing physically? I know you're in the gym before work.
You bet. So my best bud Spencer, who is my business partner in this entire endeavor, he's got a twin brother named Max, and Max is my workout partner. These guys, the McCuddies, they're awesome. You can use them for all sorts of different things. They got the workout partner. I got the business partner.
They're on episode 1, by the way. Yeah, Spencer and Max are the ones I work out.
The ones that can't spot each other on the bench. So this mall's got a gym built into it, which is great. It's a Gold's Gym. and I'll get there at about 9:45. The mall doesn't open until 11, which is fantastic.
Nice.
So I have my mornings back again.
Mm-hmm.
I'll wake up at about 7:30 these days. I'll get up and I'll study one of a few separate projects I'm working on, because now that I own the company that I work for,
Mm-hmm.
I can choose how I delegate my time throughout the day. So sometimes I'll be working on something related to hyperthrift, but sometimes I'll be working on something entirely exterior, like studying drop shipping, which is a new thing that I've been heavily investing my time into learning how to do, and it's something I'm going to be going heavy into throughout the rest of this year. And I'll be working on studying my drop shipping modules and you know, working on the marketing and testing different products and things like that while I'm here at the store. Nobody can tell me I can't, because I own the business. It's fantastic. And in that same vein, because I have all this time back, I've also got a lot of time in the morning before I need to come in, because I don't need to be here until 11. So I'll get up at about 7:30, I'll read or cook or do whatever, head out of my place at about 9:15, 9:30, 9:45, work out at the gym with Max, get here at about 11, do whatever is required to make sure the store is running perfectly, and then get on to doing whatever else I want to do while I'm still here.
That's a nice schedule.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
And it's crazy because we had a conversation about this, and he was literally across the ways at PacSun dreaming about the freedom. And, you know, when I own my own store, you know, actually talk a little bit about that, because, you know, a lot of times we like, oh, it would be so cool to do this. I was driving over here, and one of my friends messaged me a few days back. He's like, man, I've been wanting to start a podcast. And I'm like, why don't you? And he's like, well, I don't know, you know, and it's just about doing it. So talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people have ideas or things they want to do, but they never execute on. For me, it was like the buildup. I'm like, man, it'd be cool to create a YouTube series about that. And then we talked, and you're like, just do it. And I'm like, all right, let's just do it. But like that little jump of like really just following through on what you said you're going to do.
For me, it was a compound effect of not having done things that I wanted to do for so long, that I felt, and figuratively, an excess accumulation of weight on my shoulders. I'd come up with so many different ideas. I have a nonprofit organization called See Difference that I founded in 2019, and I'd done campaigns through 2021, and I haven't done anything in the last year or two, and I kind of felt like I'd let myself down with that. I didn't start any new fundraisers. I was working at PacSun, and I had nothing else exterior going for me. I had my podcast, through which you were borrowing the equipment from, called the Reconsider Reality podcast. Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, whatever you listen to your podcasts on. Anyways. And
you're going to bring that back here soon.
I am. Totally I am. Yeah, totally.
And I also wanted to come on here to inspire him to bring it back.
No, this is getting me excited. Using our equipment again, it makes me want to do it again. But what I'm getting at is, I had my nonprofit. I wasn't being proactive in starting new projects and keeping the momentum going. The movement that I emphasized is so important in life. I wasn't doing that. And I felt that was primarily because of how much time I invested into this job. I worked between 40 and 45 hours a week, which doesn't sound insane, and it's not. There are people that work significantly more than that, but I factor in my commute here from Portland to Vancouver, and then of course back, and then I factor in lunch breaks, because I'm not working, but I'm certainly still here when I'm on my lunch breaks, and then I think about excess time invested in various capacities. If I was doing paperwork outside of the store, and I mean, holy shit, it was a massive time investment, and none of that time was going back into myself, because that entity was not mine. And so I just felt like I didn't have, and of course it was an excuse, and it was an easy excuse to lean on. I felt like I didn't have time to work on my nonprofit organization. I felt like I didn't have time to host the podcast. I felt like I didn't have time to do any of these things. But I had proven to myself that I had, because I had started the podcast, I had done episodes of it, I had started the organization, I had done full humanitarian missions. I have time for these things. It's just a matter of finding the inspiration to do them. And so when I had the idea for Hyperthrift, I immediately categorized it as a bigger fundamental side project, like the podcast or like my nonprofit. I said, this is another one of those things. This is something that ought to have a significant portion of my attention. However, this needs to be different, because the other two I have let falter. I've let them fall off. I've let them diminish. I've almost let the flame go out, so to speak. So for this new project, Hyperthrift, two things need to take place. One, I need to not let the flame diminish. And two, I need to scale it as fast as I can, because unlike the other ones, unlike the podcast for recreation and the nonprofit, which is charitable, not for profit, Hyperthrift was a proper business model. It was for profit. So this is the first thing that I'm doing on the side outside of my daily job that could actually yield me some additional income, which could change my life.
Right.
So I went hard with Hyperthrift.
Yeah.
I worked from 9:30 to 6:30 here at Paxson. I'd get home by about 7, and I'd work from 7 p.m. till 1 a.m. designing the website every night. Between 4 and 6 hours every night outside of work, working on the website. And then when I had resolved to open this store and I was getting ready to sign the lease, the dynamic got even more difficult than that. I signed the lease here on March 22nd, and I was still working at Paxson. So I would work 9 to 6 or 9:30 to 6:30, and then I'd come over here again from 7 to 1, 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. And I'd get home at 1:30, and then I'd eat something. I'd go to bed just in time to fucking wake up to come here at 9:30 again and do the whole thing. And I was pulling 16, 17-hour days every day for a month straight. I lost weight. I was hungry. I was tired. I wasn't going to the gym. But I did all of that because I figured that something that could yield the proportion of outcome that I think that it will is going to require an equally large and proportional investment of my time and personal energy. Wow. If I'm going to get something so significant out of this, I've got to put a significant amount of my life force, my energy, my creative process into it. If I want to get something out, I ought to put something in that is proportional. So I put a lot into this, a lot more than I wanted to. And at the time, it sucked. Yeah. But here we are, and we're sitting inside of the store right now, and I understand that the fruits of my labor have yielded crop.
Yeah.
This is great.
That's amazing. No, that's crazy. And it's like, where do you put your time? Things just don't happen. You intentionally have to do it.
Yep.
And then it's really crazy. The things on the other side of self-motivation are usually the things that yield high reward.
Everything's on the other side of self-motivation.
Yeah.
Everything. And we fail to see it because we've got these goggles on. But as soon as you take them off and you start to take action and you start to initiate this motion, this movement, like I had discussed earlier, as soon as you start to do that, it's hard to stop it. It's like when you begin to make progress at the gym and you see that and you're inspired and you want to keep doing it. It compounds. It's a snowball effect. Yeah. As soon as you actually try, and I mean actually try, I don't mean try something for a week or two, get really into it, but then drop off and you go back to whatever you were doing. You start looking at stocks. You want to day trade the stock market or something because you want to get really rich. You do that for a week or two and you look at statistics and they say 92% of traders fail or whatever it is, and then ultimately you give up. And maybe you don't admit that out loud or otherwise consciously to yourself because you don't want to admit to yourself that you've let yourself down.
Right.
When really you have. I don't mean that. I mean actually try something for once in your goddamn life. I mean dedicate the significant amount of your life force to it for an indefinite period of time until you see results start to yield. Yeah. When I started working on Hyperthrift, I had no idea that I wanted to make this into a store. When I first signed the lease, it was all contingent. When we would open was all contingent on when they would be able to construct the storefront sign. I had no idea how long I had. I didn't know if I had 30 days. I didn't know if I had 40 days. All I knew is I had an empty store with walls that weren't painted and an ugly floor, and I knew I had to get it ready for customers to come in. Yeah. So I dedicated myself for an indefinite amount of time until I began to see results yielding. And that's what I mean when I say try. Don't just try for a specified amount of time. I'm gonna do this for 10 days, and no, just keep going with something and see what from it you can yield. Yeah. That's what I mean.
And having a really goal in mind at the end of it.
Yes, of course.
And that's actually what's going to push you and motivate you, because then it's like, even me with the build-up itself, it's like, now I got to post a video every week. Yep. Now I got to get my creative juices
going. You signed up for it,
Yeah, but it's going to allow you to be like, okay, it forces you to stretch out of it. Talk a little bit, if you want to share it, it's cool that you went from something you've known and know to then now creating money out of it. Back then your income was coming from someone else. Right. You're like, you know what? I could do this on my own.
I'm in the same industry still. This is a retail storefront. And I'd been in it for so long that I figured I could implement my knowledge of the product and my knowledge of the industry into and translate it into my own physical front through which I could generate an income. And that's exactly what I've done. However, this is markedly different from Paxson in the sense that was a fast fashion new retail store, and this is a vintage storefront through which everything is used, and a lot of it very old. And I knew about margins and about marketing and things of that nature, but what I didn't know all too much about was the whole vintage space. and I didn't consider it to be something that I would heavily have to invest into, vintage tees and vintage denim and things of that nature, because that was only going to be one category of the business. We've got the apparel here, but we've got video games over there, and we've got music and media in the corner here, and then we've got posters over there, and I didn't think that I would have to invest too heavily into the product knowledge of any one sector, but I quickly learned how wrong that was, because the products that turn the most here by a significant margin is the clothing. So I had to learn all about single stitch and different types of Levi's and the stitching inside of the Levi's, and if you find a particular kind that's called selvage, they're worth quite a bit, and the fact that different graphics on tees of different fashions are worth more than others, and all these certain things and certain time periods yield items that are just significantly more valuable than others, and also certain tags, even if it's a blank item but it's got a specific tag on it, and there are all sorts of things that I didn't know previous, and so I didn't go into this just because I had the product knowledge, because I don't want to discourage anybody that thinks that they can't, pursue a new sector of business or of any kind of self-improvement for that matter, because they don't know about it. I don't want to give anybody that impression. I knew plenty about old game systems, but I knew hardly anything about vintage clothing. I knew plenty about old CDs, but I knew hardly anything about old TVs. So I didn't go into this simply because I was confident that I had the product knowledge. I certainly didn't, and I'm certainly still developing it. What was important is that I had a confidence in myself that whatever I needed to learn, I could learn.
Yeah, that's very important, the confidence within yourself, because then you go to any endeavor or, you transition in your life, you're like, I figured it out before, I could figure it out again. That's the betting on yourself. You bet on yourself with higher stakes when you have more confidence within yourself and you built yourself.
Sure.
You said not to discourage anyone on personal growth or any of that. I know you're big on that. What are you reading? And you in the morning you stay up and get up, you read. That's very important to you. Talk a little bit about books, things you've been learning.
Yeah, sure. Well, books and things I've been learning are
well, you've been learning drop shipping, and then you've been learning more about your store. But what about books? Talk a little bit about the importance of reading and healthy input, because that's also very important.
Well, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill is what I'm reading right now.
Nice.
He was a contemporary of Carnegie, of Andrew Carnegie, and he released the book, I think, initially in like 31. So it's just timeless info that I think is fantastic. I know you've read the book.
Yeah.
But something that it really drives home is the concept of manifestation. But it's a very westernized viewpoint on this concept. So he doesn't use the word manifestation. He says, think hard and conceptualize what it is that you want in life and then work to make it happen. But that is in essence what manifestation is. And so I think it's fantastic. You're taking these concepts, these Eastern concepts from thousands of years ago that have far preceded us and previous generations of our families, and we're looking at them from a modern and contemporary standpoint.
Yeah.
To manifest something is to decide that you want something, then to see it, and then ultimately to make it happen. And Think and Grow Rich is exactly as the title suggests. You think, and then you take action in order to grow rich. I'm reading the book, and he speaks about writing out in definite words what it is that you want to achieve within a specified period of time. And it ought to be something monetary, because that's the point of the book, is to grow rich. Once you're rich, you can manifest other areas. He says you can do this and you can do that, but start with the money. That's Napoleon Hill's that's his philosophy anyways.
Yeah.
And so what he says is that you ought to specify a certain amount of time in which you want to achieve or to attain a certain amount of money. What I've done for myself is 6 months to attain $100,000 in liquid cash. And I have it on a piece of paper that I have in a clear laminate, and I have it on a little lanyard tacked on my wall right by my bed. And I look at that every night before I go to sleep, and I look at that every morning when I wake up. And I say it to myself. I say, I, Tate Weaver, will have $100,000 in liquid cash in my possession by March 12th, 2024. In order to attain this money, so on and so forth. I'll talk about exactly what it is I intend to do in order to attain this exact amount of money.
Yeah.
And then I finish it off with a set of affirmations that say, I will attain this money. I have this money. I simply need to take action in the manner listed above to see this money transferred into my possession. I say to myself that the past, the present, and the future are all existing simultaneously. We are simply only able to recognize the present moment, but because the present and the future exist, In the same time, in the future, I have the money. That is to say, I currently have the money. I simply need to do what is necessary in order to transmute the money from the future to the present.
Wow.
Yeah, right?
That
Cool.
gives me goosebumps. But I love that, man. I love how you talked about manifestation is not only imagining it and saying it, but actually acting upon it.
There are multiple components.
Yeah, I mean, I met so many people that are like, oh, I'm manifesting this, which is great. But it's like, what are you doing to obtain it? You know, what we talked about it, getting in motion.
Right.
And, you know,
right.
That's what life's about. And it's crazy that because you not only manifested it, you also had a goal to obtain it. So now you're acting upon it. You know, a lot of people, like I said, a lot of people I've met, when they read this concept of manifestation, they think it's just like, oh, like I just got to keep saying it and, you know, it'll come to me. No, it's now adjusting your mind towards achieving something and believing in your mind that you already have it there while you're acting upon it. And it's just now allowing the future to catch up to the present.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
You don't have to be religious to pull the significance out of this quote that I have long repeated to myself. And I heard it in a song. It was a One Republic song. It was called Preacher, actually. You might know it. But he says, God only helps those who learn to help themselves. And I think that's fantastic, should you believe in God or not. Because in this instance, they're saying that God is willing to help you only so long as you are willing to take effort to help yourself. Mm-hmm. He's going to help lift you up so long as you genuinely want to be lifted up and are going to take steps to get there on your own. Wow. Then he will intervene and he will make it easier. If you manifest something and you want it, that's fantastic. You ought to manifest things. But the moment that you take a genuine effort and you take steps forward in order to attain these things that you want to manifest, the universe is going to step in and help bring those things to you.
Yeah. That makes me think of this great quote that I talk about a lot is the readiness, a man or woman that walks with definite purpose. You have a plan in mind. Is the man that walks with definite purpose, the world allows a clear path for them to pass and sometimes come at their aid.
Same thing. I love it. Yeah.
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 And that's amazing. And also too, I think with manifestation, it's allowed clarity of the mind. You know, it's allowing you to see things that you don't always see. Once you want a goal, you start clearing out all the noise and you start seeing it like, oh, I want this certain car. Right. You know, that's the simplest one. Like, oh, I want this, you know, Toyota 4Runner or whatever. And then now you start seeing in the road everywhere. Those cars have always been there, but now you're focusing on that one thing. So life's allowing you to see it, you know, and that's the beautiful thing about manifestation is like, it starts clearing out all the noise because your mind can't focus on a million things at once. It only focuses on what you put focus on. You know, where focus goes, energy flows. Mm-hmm. I love that saying. So, no, man, this was great, and I just wanted to come on here and just really have a conversation, pick your mind. I know you're doing things that most people aren't. You're betting on yourself. You've done great, and you're continuing to do great, and you know you've helped me a lot. You know, community is very important. That's what this episode was really about, talking about, you know, the buildup is not just physical, which is the main focus. It's not just mental, but it's also, you know, your network and your friends. And because those will all help you in all other areas of your life. And we're all humans that are made for community. Isolation is not good for the soul. I mean, you look at the last couple of years with pandemic and you've seen where people are. That's isolation. You know, we were humans created for community. So the people around you is very important. The conversations you have are very important. I mean, I've learned so much from you today. And that's like what I love. You know, you get around people that teach you stuff, you know. Well, yet you see people like, oh, wow, you actually like had a goal in mind. It was scary. People, I'm sure you've had people that weren't in your circle that were like, that's so crazy. You're quitting a comfortable job.
Oh, of course. You know? More times than I can remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're scared, but then you get around people like myself or, you know, others were like, do it. You know, you tell me, I got to watch myself sometimes when I'm around these guys or all my other friends, because when I say something, they're like, do it. Just be about it. And it's like, all right, cool, you know?
Yep.
But yeah, any last closing thoughts, greatest piece of advice you'd receive, anything just to leave the audience with?
Yeah. Something that I have long felt to be true for myself that I think ought to be a valuable message for anybody is that there comes a point in your life where you need to learn to call your own shots. And like Jose assumed, and he was correct in his assumption, that there were probably plenty of people that told me that I couldn't open my own business, or that it would be very risky or a poor endeavor, a bad choice for me. There were plenty of people that said that. Oh, you bet, more than I can count. Truth be told, however, it was time for me to take the reins and to call my shots in my life, because if not my choices, then who else's? So I think that there comes a point where you need to define a stop loss in your life. You need to draw a line in the sand and decide for yourself that this is the point in which you are going to call your own shots, operating on your own discretion and with your own confidence. If you're not able to do that, you're not going to have movement in life. If you're not able to move, you're not going to be successful.
That's great. Yeah. So call your own shots. Thank you so much for allowing me to, not only use your equipment, be in your store, but most importantly, pick your mind. And, and sharing this, 30 minutes to an hour of life with me, and then, the rest of life. It's crazy. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of The Build Up. Make sure to check out his store. I'll put the link down below, and follow him on Instagram and kind of see what he's doing. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you next week.